Hi everyone, welcome back to another week on the Brush by Brandy YouTube channel. And this week I'm not sitting in front of the project that we worked on because this week is a much bigger project. And this isn't something that I usually take on. It's not something that's usually part of my portfolio, but every once in a while I get to dig in. So I found a friend who was willing to let me tackle her kitchen. Kitchens are major projects. I don't want to downrate that to you guys. I have all the respect in the world for people who do kitchens regularly because they are a project. A few things I want to say, they're bigger projects to me because I don't have a team that regularly does this. So this is just going to be me and my husband, Sean. We're going to tackle this kitchen. I did have my friend whose kitchen this is and her daughters stepped in and they did a lot of the prep work themselves. So I'm going to be showing some of that to you guys. The end results are beautiful. And what I liked about doing this project is it's actually a real kitchen. It's a real lived-in family kitchen. From a really warm, comfortable home. And I think it has a lot of the features that a lot of kitchens would start with that people might be intimidated to really take on. But this is often the stuff that we're really working on. And so that means we're going to take an old dated latex paint finish. We're going to strip these cabinets, these old oak cabinets. We're going to paint into some oak grain, do some priming and spraying. I'm going to use Wiseow's 1 Hour Enamel, which is a beautiful product for a kitchen, one I stand by wholeheartedly. And she even chose a really fun color, which was another perk of doing this kitchen. So I hope you guys enjoyed this process. I loved getting to see the beginning, the before and then the after photos to see how far it came. It added so much to this house, so much character. And I think it fits the family that belongs to this kitchen perfectly. So thank you for letting me step into your homes, and I hope you guys enjoy this project. Let's get started. Here's where we started on this kitchen, and I think this is a really cool project because it is a realistic view of what many kitchens start as. This is old latex paint on these cabinets that has worn away, especially where it gets finger wear around the handles. It was peeling and chipping. It needed to be removed. I suggested to my friend that she buy a carbide scraper, and they were amazed. It actually started removing that paint really well. Along with removing the old peeling paint, they needed to replace a few pieces of trim around the edges of the cabinets, and so they did that as well. Her ideal color choice for this kitchen was kind of a bold, rich blue-green. Here's an inspiration photo, and you're going to want to save this because wait until you see the end result. I pulled out my Wiseow paint color samples. I painted some sticks for her to take home and try out in her room and think on that. And in the meantime, set her to work on removing this old paint. The carbide scraper ended up being the easiest tool to use for this paint job. You can see how just putting a little bit of pressure on that tool and pulling it back removes all of that paint. I also brought over my heat gun and a scraper, and we tried that method, but it didn't work quite as well as that carbide scraper. You guys, this is a heck of a job removing old paint, and this is the #1 reason why I'd say if you do your cabinets right to begin with, then you hopefully should never have to remove the paint again. I know that the paint job that I'm going to give her, if she ever wanted to change the color, she could paint right over the top of it. But this old chipping, peeling paint, it just couldn't stay. We also tried my soda blaster, and this is a tool that's filled with calcium carbonate, and you can spray it into the wood grain, but it ended up not working to remove that latex paint from the old wood grain, so we didn't use this tool at all. You can see it's not even budging in some of that molding. I was really hoping this would be an effective tool, but unfortunately it just didn't work. So with all of that paint removed, scraped off of the surface, now they were roughed up pretty good. So I needed to pull out my Surf Prep sander. And thankfully Surf Prep has these foam abrasives that you can attach to the Surf Prep sander. And I could sand around the edges of these moldings perfectly. It just conforms to all those curves without damaging the moldings. I needed to sand all the bases in her kitchen. I did take the doors and drawers home, and I'm going to do those at home in my workspace. Once all of these surfaces are sanded smooth, I vacuumed this all clean so it's free of dust. We're getting to where I can start putting new finishes back on. First, I needed to do some repairs. Some of these cabinets had some damage that I needed to sand through, and so I'm going to smooth those out just using some Bondo. I mixed up the Bondo. This is a hardware store item, and I'm going to fill that in. Any areas that I couldn't get to with my sander, I'm going to remove that old paint just using a paint scraper, and I'm going to have to sand these by hand to get those smooth as well. Are you ready to step into this kitchen and see what they were living with through this whole process? This was a nightmare for them, you guys. We masked off everything using plastic and painter's tape. It's just about ready to start putting some new finishes on. So let's go ahead and load up my paint sprayer. I'm going to dilute some Wiesel primer. This is their primer in light gray, and I love this primer. It sprays beautifully. It's a water-based primer. The light gray is going to be the perfect color underneath the blue-green that we chose for these cabinets. I start out by diluting it, adding a little bit of water, and then I'm going to run this through a paint sprayer and put this into my Apollo sprayer. I'm going to test it out on some cardboard before I actually start spraying it onto my cabinets. I'm using a piece of cardboard to max off any areas that I don't want to get any overspray onto, but the Apollo is an amazing sprayer because it has relatively little overspray. When I first received the doors from my friend, this is what most of them look like. She had done all of the stripping, used a carbide scraper, which is one of these, to remove as much of the paint as possible. And actually they're pretty clean, but there is a lot of paint that's still left in the grain. And so here is the system that I found with my Surf Prep that I liked the best for getting these doors smooth. So I'm starting out with a pad saver on my Surf Prep sander, and this just protects the backup pad, which is the red pad, and gives that a little bit longer lifespan. So I always use the pad saver on there. And then I'm starting with an 80 grit, and this is an 80 grit film. From the 80 grit, I'm going down to a 120 grit. When you're jumping between grits of sandpaper, you never want to go more than 100 grits in between. After I'm using the films, I'm going on to the pads from Surf Prep, and that's because these doors have a profile on them, and these have a little bit of squish in them to help me work around that. So I'm starting with a medium for that, which is about the same as the 120. And then after I've gone on with the medium, I'm going in with a fine pad as well. And this one's a little bit softer. So that is the system that I'm using on these. That's worked the best for me so far. Let's pop on this 80 grit and I'll get started on this door. Okay, so now that I've just gone around the surface of the door and given it a sanding, I'm going to go ahead and take my film off of the Surf Prep, and I'm going to offset it just a little bit, and that means I'm going to raise it up so just a little tiny edge of that film hangs off the edge of my sander. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slow down the speed of my sander using this minus button here. And then I'm just going to ride it in this crevice of the door, and that's going to help me get inside this 90-degree corner and keep this sanding nice and smooth because I want to get this as fine sanded as possible. Okay, once I've gone over the entire surface of my door using the 80 grit and I've gotten into those 90-degree crevices, I'm going to come back with that 120. And I'm just going to smooth this out a little bit before I come back with some of the padded sponge. Okay, these doors are going to be repainted, which means I don't need to fully remove all of this paint from the grain. I'm going to go ahead and leave that in there because as long as it's smooth, these are going to be repainted again. These do have a strong oak grain in them, and my painted finish is going to show some grain. If I wanted to get rid of the grain, I would need to use a wood filler. I did a sample door for this customer, and she likes the wood grain look on that, so we're going to go ahead and leave that oak grain exposed. So now that I've gotten all my flat surfaces, I need to get into some of the profiles inside that I can't really get to with the flat surface of the sander. And for that, I'm going to use some of the abrasives or the padded abrasives from Surf Prep. So I'm going to add this on here, and this has a lightly padded surface on it that's going to conform to some of these rounded surfaces. All right, and now that I've gone around all four sides, inside and also this outside edge with the medium padded abrasive, I'm going to go ahead and put on a fine padded abrasive. And this one's a little bit squishier, and it's also a softer grit. And this is just going to fine sand and get this super buttery smooth. I'm going to go over the entire door, the flat portions, any curvature, and the moldings as well, all with this pad. I completed that same sanding process on all of the doors and drawers for this kitchen. So imagine doing this process times about 20. It actually only took me a couple of hours to do all of them. Not too bad. Now it's time to finally start laying some primer onto these. So you guys saw my primer process in the part of the video where we did the base cabinets, but now I'm doing these doors and drawers at home. I laid out a tarp. I do not have a painting booth at my house, and so this would be a normal setup that most people would use. I let out a tarp to protect the ground. I put these up on painter's triangles, and I'm going to do one side at a time. So 2 coats on each side, and then I'm going to flip them and do the reverse. With all of my primer, 2 coats on the front and the reverse of all of these doors and drawers, I can finally start laying some paint on. And this is the color we chose. This is from Wiesel Paint, and this color is called Metrocity. If you've ever seen the kids' movie Megamind, it's an animation movie, you know that the villain in the film refers to the city as metrocity. So every time I see the word metrocity, I'm going to pronounce it metrocity. It just sticks in my head. I'm a boy mom. And my friend also got the reference when she chose this paint color. That's how I know she's meant to be my friend. And that was how she knew this was meant to be the color for her kitchen. I absolutely love that it has that story behind it. So this color is gorgeous. You guys, can you imagine it in a kitchen? And it also looks exactly like her inspiration photo. Spraying the paint onto these doors and drawers was so satisfying. I loved seeing the color go down. But now let's go back to her house and pay attention to the bases. So I had left this for about 2 weeks with the primer on the bases. She retaped off everything with paper instead of the plastic, and the paper worked much better. So I highly recommend paper over plastic when you're masking off your kitchen cabinets. It's time to start laying this same color onto the bases in the cabinets. And it's amazing to see the difference in the color in the interior space versus in the workspace at my home. It slightly changes the color a little bit. It's a low light kitchen, and I think that's important to make sure you test your color in the lighting of your actual space. Before I got started laying paint onto these cabinets, I did sand the primer down using my Surf Prep sander and a fine grit paper just to make sure that primer coat was ultra smooth and soft before the paint starts going on. The paint that we're using is 1 Hour Enamel from Wiesel Paint, and I chose 1 Hour Enamel for a few reasons. Number one, it has a quick dry time. The 1 hour refers to that I can recoat within 1 to 2 hours in most cases. It's got a 90% cure time in 4 hours, meaning that I can return this kitchen to full use without having to wait a full 30 days for it to cure. 1 Hour Enamel also dries to a satin finish without the need to top coat, so I'm saving myself a step in this kitchen. It's highly wipeable, and once it's fully cured, this stuff dries strong as nails. It's a really firm enamel paint. So I know that I can leave this to a kitchen that's got a family that's going to be using it on a daily basis, and it's going to stand up to food and spills and splashes and wiping. 1 Hour Enamel also sprays beautifully, and it also can be brushed or rolled with a roller. In this case, using the paint sprayer saved us a ton of time and gave us the smoothest and most professional coating. While we watch my husband Sean spray all of these cabinets, and he's spraying up high, he can reach those areas a little better than I can up on a ladder. He does a great job, but I'm going to go ahead and talk you through this process a little bit. So the majority of the time that we spent on this kitchen cabinet process was in the prep work, making sure that that paint was all the way removed and that those cabinet doors were sanded down smooth. When I sanded in the kitchen all of the bases, I sanded for about 4 hours in their kitchen, and that doesn't include the 2 more hours that I did at home on all those doors and drawers. So there's a lot of prep time in this kitchen. Making sure the primer went down, this is what made the paint take very smoothly to these doors. You want to make sure that you don't skip the primer step. This is also going to help that paint adhere to those surfaces. Wiesel's primer is a gripping primer and a stain blocking primer in one, so adding that primer underneath is going to help this paint bond to that surface, and it's also going to keep that oak grain from bleeding through and discoloring the paint over time. Now there's a big reason I don't do kitchens, and that's because they're extremely time consuming. I don't have a crew for this, so this is just a husband and wife team doing this along with the family whose kitchen this is, helping us do the prep work. And they did the prep work because I absolutely hate doing prep work. So they did all the taping off and that paint removal, and I took over when it came to the sanding and the spraying. I also want to note that I did not charge for this kitchen. I did this in exchange for the content and because this is a great family friend who's been extremely good to me and my kids. And so I wanted to return the favor to her, so it was an honor to do it. But in the fair market, I would say this is a job worth about $3,000 to $4,000 for the amount of work that goes into doing a kitchen. So just be aware of that when you're looking for this on the open market. The exchange is doing the work yourself or paying a little bit of a price for it, and it's worth every penny. I have all the respect in the world for people who do kitchens regularly. They are a massive job, but I will say the reward at the end is like no other. I do furniture on a regular basis, and seeing a kitchen fully complete is so rewarding. So while we finish watching Sean spray the second coat on these cabinets, I'm going to repeat what the process has been so far. So we made sure to take down all the cabinet doors and drawers. We labeled them and numbered them where they belong in the kitchen, along with a map to reference so they could be rehung later. We did any repairs that the doors and drawers needed, and also to the base cabinets before we started the process. Removed any existing paint. If it's chipping or peeling, it needs to come off of the surface because it will cause your next coats to chip and peel along with it. You want to start with a clean, smooth surface. After that, we added 2 coats of a primer from Wiseowl paint, and now I'm adding 2 coats of Wiseowl 1 hour enamel, and this color is called Metrocity. For this entire kitchen, I ended up using about 1.25 gallons of this color of paint. It really went a long way. It's actually very reasonable when you consider the overall cost of materials to do a kitchen like this. The good news is that once this second coat of paint goes on, this kitchen is complete and ready to go back together. I did task the homeowner with putting all of the doors and drawers back in place. She chose some new black hardware hinges and pulls to put on all these cabinet doors and drawers, and she put this kitchen all back together. We pulled all of that painter's tape, and all the paper and plastic can be disposed of. This kitchen is complete. Are you guys ready to see what it looks like? You do want to make sure you remove your painter's tape while the paint is still fresh. The longer you let the paint dry with the painter's tape on there, you take the risk of pulling paint on the edges of your cabinets when you're removing that tape. We did have a little bit of overspray around some edges of the cabinet, so she did a few touch-ups. Here is this kitchen complete. You guys, this color is absolutely gorgeous with the black backsplash and the black hardware. She's got a little bit of a bohemian vibe going in her house. It's very eclectic. It's very warm and homey. This is a place that my kids love to go and hang out, and everybody loves to be. So I think her kitchen turned out beautifully. I think it reflects the family who lives here. You guys can see this is a low light kitchen, so it makes it ultra dramatic. It has a little bit of personality to it that the white paint didn't have before. So this kitchen has longevity, and it'll go for years to come. You can find a materials list and links for everything I used in this video in the description for this post. You can find more Brush by Brandy on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube, and on my website at brushbybrandy.com. And don't forget to click that subscribe button for weekly tutorials here at Brush by Brandy on YouTube.